Hello, everybody, and welcome to a bonus episode of the World of Eora, a podcast focused on the world of Pillars of Eternity and AVOWED, which share the same fantasy setting, known as Eora. These bonus episodes come in every off week to either supplement the lore from previous episodes or just talk about pieces of lore that are not really expansive enough to have a full episode about, but are still worthy of talking about in the first place, or to discuss something related to the show or just something on the side that I wanted to create that wasn't really related to the show in and of itself. Today, I'm going to be talking about an idea that exists within the world of Eora that you can find in Pillars of Eternity 2 and 1 as well, if you're paying attention enough, and potentially in AVOWED and potentially beyond, especially if you're creating your own tabletop role-playing games. Today, I'm going to be assuming that listeners have at least some familiarity with the world or the content from this podcast. Normally, I try to assume not very much of a knowledge base, but I might assume a little bit today. The only thing that I will give you a little explanation of is what Adra is, and that'll be important for what we're discussing today, because what we're going to talk about today is the idea of teleportation through Adra that you find within the Pillars of Eternity games.
Is that a reason to stop trying? Shall we remain in the dark until the end of time and have the last breath of the last person alive be breathed in ignorance? The gods want us to know. The clues are all around us. In understanding these truths, we honor their creation.
If you've played Pillars of Eternity 1 or 2, then you will have at some point run into the resource that is known as Adra. For those who need a quick reminder on what Adra is, it is essentially this jade-like looking crystal, a gemstone. It's a unique gemstone for this fantasy world. And what it does is it conducts soul energy. So the stuff that your soul is made of, the very quote-unquote material that your soul is comprised of, that unique energy can flow through this natural resource, this gemstone known as Adra. It's a wonderful idea for a fantasy game, and it's a cool concept to put behind, but of course it brings a lot of theoretical questions about it. You might speculate on uses. One such speculation might be, can you use it to teleport people through the world? Now, in playing Pillars of Eternity 1 and 2, you don't have that ability. You can't fast travel from one place to another using Adra gemstone, which is connected all as one big piece deep underground. At least in theory, all the Adra in the world is one large piece. Theoretically, you should be able to teleport from one to the other, but you can't, and you never do see it in game. However, if you've played through Pillars of Eternity 2, you might remember a very important side quest where you go to the Spire of Soul Seers, which is a location of the Sacred Stair located within the city of Nekataka, one of the, basically the major city, the major port for the Pillars of Eternity 2 game. And on top of this large building is a luminous Adra piece, a very powerful piece of luminous Adra. And the Valian Trading Company, who I've talked about in another episode, have set up a laboratory at the top of this spire, and they are trying to use this piece of Adra as a location to transport from one to another. And you, as the main character of the game, can send you and your party to this place and attempt to join in on this scientific experiment to see whether or not you can do so. Now, I will warn you from here on in, there is spoilers for the quests that follow here. I am going to talk about what happens in these quests, so if you want to avoid spoilers for how this works, consider dropping the episode now. But with that said, let's move forward. The first quest in question is called A Glimpse Beyond, and basically you have been told by Director Castol of the Valian Trading Company to go and talk to a person named Flaun Elet about the experiments that are going on there. When you get there, Flaun explains to you about what they are trying to accomplish, and essentially teleportation using Adra pillars, because they theorize again that all of the Adra is connected deep underground. And so the logic is sound, and they seem to have a science that's sound behind it, but they need someone who's willing to take the leap, who's willing to try. And so you can, if you choose to, volunteer you and your party to jump in, if you will, to the Pillar of Adra and teleport somewhere else in the world. When you do this, you are teleported, sort of, but not to any place that people were hoping you would teleport to. You actually wake up in a different realm entirely. That is the realm of the beast of winter himself, Remergond, the god of cold and entropy and bad luck and the unraveling of all things. So here you are in this death god's realm, not really sure what has gone on. You make your way through, you fight some enemies, trying to figure out a way to get back, when you run into a giant mask, which is apparently Remergond himself, or at least you can talk to the Beast of Winter there. A warning to anyone who does play this, if you decide to be cheeky and mouth off to Remergond, he will happily erase you from existence, and you will have to reload your previous save. So just know, if you're role-playing as a cheeky person, and you're playing on Iron Man mode, that's the end of it for you there. So be careful when talking condescendingly towards a god of death. But assuming that you do get past all the enemies and you do talk to Remergond, he will teleport you back to the mundane physical world, with a warning to the laboratory people, the scientists, to stop meddling in things that are beyond themselves. You didn't actually teleport into Remergond's realm. Your body just lay limpless, or maybe it was standing there. Either way, your soul or your mind or something like that went to Remergond's realm, but your body stayed exactly where it was the whole time. It never went anywhere. A little later in the game, you are sent a missive to come back, and if you're willing to, try again to be teleported through the Adra piece. Of course, no, they don't heed the warning. They continue doing the thing of science that they do, and they want to try again. And so you can go back to the Spire of the Soul Seers and talk to Flaun, and then they will send you to be teleported again. This time, however, is a little bit different. When you get there, you are in fact teleported to the lower level of Pahawane, which is a location on the exact same island that this experiment is taking place in. Now, you do have to make your way back on foot all the way to the laboratory itself to see what happened. And when you get there, you discover that mercenaries have actually attacked the spire itself. But it worked. It did. It totally worked. You were teleported. You and your people were teleported to the same place on the island, and I don't think it was where they intended on sending you, but you were sent somewhere. And that is a major achievement in the history and the science of animancy. This isn't the only time something like this has actually occurred in the history of animancy and the history of Pillars of Eternity, but this is the first time that you get to interact with it. In the first Pillars of Eternity game, you gain control of a stronghold called Caed Nua, and as part of being the master of this stronghold, you are given opportunities to send your underlings or your hirelings or your companions on adventures in the name of yourself, in the name of Caed Nua. One of such adventures involves going off to see a Valiant animancer known as Echeta. She has claimed that she believes all of this Adra is interconnected within Eora itself. This is a popular idea that I've already been talking about. And that you could physically travel along pathways of living Adra down through the underground veins and then up somewhere else. You could physically transport yourself. I won't go into the details of how the experiment was set up and how everything ended up. But long story short, they managed to get this animancer into the Adra somehow, and they were tracking her in some way, shape, or form, which was very difficult, managed to establish what they believe is communication with her again. She said that she could not return back through the Adra, but there was this idea that she had somehow traveled physically and spiritually through the Adra itself. And so this idea does exist that you can transport physical material through this Adra resource that is normally just for the spiritual material. It's a fascinating and wonderful idea, and if you yourself are setting up a tabletop role-playing game set in the world of Eora, or taking inspiration from the Pillars of Eternity games, this is something you might want to include in asking, how is this possible? How could physical matter be transported through this thing that only conducts spiritual matter, if you will? It's also an exciting thing to consider with AVOWED coming forward, because if AVOWED takes place, let's say, after the events of Pillars of Eternity 2, there's the reality that this science has been perfected and that they've actually figured out a way to do this. It would obviously be a very easy way to shoehorn a fast travel system into the world where you could only fast travel from one location of a spire to another. Although, I don't know how you would make it as accessible as that, to just walk up and transport yourself, unless you yourself are a very powerful character, which, let's face it, that's what they tend to do in video games. So there's the chance that in AVOWED, maybe this is going to be a fast travel system that exists, if this is a level of science or technology that exists at this time. There's also the chance that if Avowed is a very, very, very distant prequel, that this technology could exist elsewhere in an ancient civilization, who I'm not going to talk about here for spoilery reasons. There's a chance you could see it in Avowed. And it's an exciting idea about how it could work. And for me, it gets my brain turning about what other opportunities and what other ideas are there within this fantasy world that not only we could see in Avowed, but that we could play in our own tabletop games as well, whether you're adapting the 5e rules of D&D or your own home system, or you're playing the alpha version of Pillars of Eternity, which you can find on their website for free, by the way. It just, it gets my creativity going, and I absolutely, I love stuff like this. So hopefully you've enjoyed it too. If you did and you want to talk more about it, ask questions, point out some additional lore, you can email me, worldofeora@gmail.com. You can also follow my Twitter so that you can follow anything that's going on with this show, at World of Eora. Thanks everyone for listening to this bonus episode of the World of Eora. I'm your host, Eric, aka Gingerino. I'll see you guys next time.